Pack your things and get out right now, or I'm calling the police. My wife believed her son's vicious lies, then 3 weeks later told me to reflect, so I filed for divorce and exposed his gambling debt scheme. I'm Ricardo, 42, and for the last 11 years I thought I'd built a solid family with Patricia. She had a son from her previous marriage, Damien, who was 16 when we married. He's 27 now and just destroyed what was left of my marriage with such elaborate lies I didn't see it coming. It all started one Tuesday afternoon. I got home early from work because I closed a big deal and wanted to celebrate with Patricia. I entered the house with flowers and a bottle of wine, expecting to find her in the kitchen as usual. Instead, I found her in the living room with Damien, both sitting on the sofa with serious expressions. The flowers slipped a bit from my hands when I saw how they looked at me. "Ricardo, we need to talk," Patricia said with a trembling voice. Her face was pale, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. Damien had his arm around his mom's shoulders with an expression I hadn't seen before. He seemed protective, but there was something else in his eyes, something that made my skin crawl. "What's wrong?" I asked, leaving the flowers on the dining table. "Patricia, are you okay? Don't make it harder," Damien interrupted before his mom could answer. His voice was cold, calculated. "We already know everything. Mom knows the truth about you." I froze. The truth about me. I had no idea what he was talking about. Patricia covered her face with her hands and began to sob. My first instinct was to go to her, console her, but Damien physically blocked me. "Don't you dare touch her," he said through clenched teeth. "You've hurt her enough." "What the hell are you talking about?" I demanded to know, feeling confusion turn into frustration. "Patricia, look at me. What did he tell you?" She finally looked up. Her eyes, which had always looked at me with love, now reflected something that broke my heart. Deep disappointment and pain. "How could you?" she whispered. "All these years I thought I knew you." "Mom told you about the woman from work," Damien said. And at that moment I knew something terrible was happening. "The one you always mentioned, Laura. You confessed everything to her last night when you came home drunk." My blood ran cold. Laura was my business partner, a colleague I'd worked with on several projects for the last 3 years. She was a brilliant professional, married with 2 kids. Our relationship had always been strictly professional. And I hadn't come home drunk last night. I'd come home tired after a business dinner where I barely had a glass of wine. "That's a lie," I said immediately, looking at Patricia. "Love, I never told you any of that because there's nothing to tell. Laura is my partner." "Enough," Patricia yelled, standing up. I'd never seen her so upset. "Don't keep lying. Damien told me everything. He said that last night when you arrived, you entered his room thinking it was ours and confessed everything in tears. You told him you'd been having an affair with Laura for 2 years, that you didn't know how to keep lying anymore." The accusation was so absurd, so completely false, that for a moment I didn't know what to say. "Patricia, that never happened. I came home last night, changed, and went to bed next to you. You were awake. We talked about my day. Don't you remember?" "Mom was asleep," Damien interjected. "She quickly took a sleeping pill 'cause she had a headache. That's why she didn't realize you entered my room." It was perfect manipulation. Patricia had been taking insomnia medication lately, and it was true that those pills made her sleep deeply, but I had never entered Damien's room. I had never confessed anything 'cause there was nothing to confess. No, I said, approaching Patricia. "This is crazy. Damien is lying. I don't know why, but he's lying." "And why would my son lie?" Patricia asked, backing away when I tried to take her hands. "What reason would he have to invent something like that?" "I don't know, but I swear on everything I love, this isn't true. You can check my phone, my emails, my messages. Call Laura if you want. Ask her." "I already did," Damien said with a barely perceptible smile. "I called her office this morning. Her assistant told me Laura took emergency leave 2 days ago. Pretty convenient, don't you think?" I felt as if the ground opened beneath my feet. Laura had taken a few days off, but it was 'cause her father had an accident and she traveled to another city to be with her family. It was information I knew, but hadn't shared at home, 'cause it happened yesterday morning and I hadn't had a chance to mention it. Her father had an accident, I explained desperately. She traveled to be with him. This has nothing to do with me. "Sure," Damien replied sarcastically. "How convenient." Patricia looked at me with a mix of pain and disgust I'll never forget. "I want you to leave," she said with a trembling but firm voice. Right now, pack your things and go. Patricia, you can't be serious. This is a terrible misunderstanding. Damien is lying and I don't know why, but we can resolve it. We can talk calmly. I don't want to talk anymore, she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't want to see you. I can't even look at you. 11 years, Ricardo. 11 years of marriage, and it turns out it was all a lie. It wasn't a lie. I insisted, feeling my own voice break. I love you. I've never been unfaithful. You have to believe me. Go. Patricia repeated, this time more coldly. If you don't leave on your own, I'll call the police. I looked at Damien, who watched me with an expression I can only describe as triumphant. At that moment I knew for sure. This had been planned. The lies, the timing, everything was designed to destroy me, but I had no way to prove it. Not right then. Okay, I said, finally defeated. I'll go. But this doesn't end here, Patricia. I'm going to prove I'm telling the truth. Whatever you say, she replied, turning away from me. I went upstairs like an automaton. I packed a suitcase with clothes and basic personal items. Every object I packed felt like a piece of my life being ripped away. When I came down, Patricia had locked herself in our room. Damien was in the living room, sitting exactly where I'd left him, with that same almost imperceptible smile on his lips. Why? I asked him as I passed. What do you gain from this? He shrugged. I don't know what you're talking about. I just told my mom the truth. You're lying, and someday she'll realize it. But by then, he replied coldly, it'll be too late. I left that house feeling like my world had collapsed in minutes. I got in the car and drove aimlessly for almost an hour before realizing I had nowhere to go. I finally ended up in a cheap hotel near downtown, where I booked a room indefinitely. That night, lying in a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that smelled of cheap disinfectant, I tried to understand what had happened. I reviewed every interaction I'd had with Damien in recent weeks, looking for signs I should have seen. And then I started remembering small details that at the time seemed insignificant. 3 weeks before, Damien had asked to borrow money for an emergency he never explained. I told him no, that he was 27 and should manage his money responsibly. He'd gotten upset, but I didn't think it was a big deal. 2 weeks ago, Patricia casually mentioned that Damien had suggested I worked too much with Laura, that maybe it wasn't healthy to spend so much time with a colleague. I took it as a silly joke at the time. Now it all made sense. Damien had been planting seeds of doubt, preparing the ground for his big lie. But why? Just for the money I denied him? It seemed too elaborate for just that. The next day, I tried to call Patricia. She didn't answer. I sent her texts explaining, begging her to listen. Nothing. I tried to contact her friends, her sister, anyone who could make her see reason. They all told me the same thing. Patricia didn't want anything to do with me. Days turned into weeks. I kept going to work trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but inside I was shattered. My colleagues noticed the change, but I made up excuses. Laura returned from her trip, and when I told her what had happened, she was horrified. Ricardo, this is crazy, she said, her eyes full of concern. I have all my travel records, my father's hospital bills, everything. I can talk to Patricia if you want. It wouldn't do any good, I replied bitterly. She already has her version of the story. Damien made sure of that. During those 3 weeks, I reflected a lot. I reflected on my marriage, on the signs I'd ignored, on the always tense relationship I had with Damien. He never fully accepted me. There was always that distance, but I never imagined he'd be capable of something like this. I also reflected on divorce, the word I never thought would apply to my marriage with Patricia, but the more I thought about it, the clearer I saw there was no going back. Not 'cause I didn't love Patricia. I loved her deeply, but she'd chosen to believe her son without giving me a chance to truly defend myself. She'd chosen to kick me out of our house, out of our life, without a single real proof. And then, exactly 21 days after she kicked me out, I received a text message from Patricia. Have you reflected on what you did? I read that message a dozen times. The audacity, the arrogance implied in those words. She expected me to crawl back, to admit guilt I didn't have, to beg forgiveness for a sin I never committed. At that moment, something changed inside me. The sadness and desperation I'd felt transformed into a cold, determined clarity. I picked up my phone and called a lawyer. The lawyer I hired was Fernando Salazar, a man in his 50s with a reputation for being meticulous and direct. When I told him my story, He listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes in a worn leather notebook. "This is classic psychological manipulation," he said when I finished. "Your stepson sowed doubts, chose the perfect moment, and took advantage of a situation where you couldn't defend yourself adequately. It's brilliant in the most twisted sense of the word. Can I do anything legally against him?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Fernando shook his head. "Unfortunately, lying to his mother isn't a crime. But we can protect your interests in the divorce. Tell me about your assets." We spent the next 2 hours reviewing my financial situation. The house was in my name. I'd bought it 2 years before meeting Patricia. I had considerable savings, investments, and my business with Laura was growing rapidly. Patricia worked as a primary school teacher, a job she loved, but which didn't pay much. Given that she initiated the separation based on false accusations and considering that the property predates the marriage, you have a strong position, Fernando explained. But I must warn you, this is going to hurt. Divorce always hurts, even when you know it's the right thing. It already hurts, I admitted, but at least it'll be on my terms. That night, sitting in my hotel room, I replied to Patricia's message. "I've reflected a lot. I'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. at the house. We need to talk." Her reply came almost immediately. "Good. I hope you come with a different attitude." I smiled bitterly at the screen. Oh, I would definitely come with a different attitude. The next day, Fernando and I arrived promptly at 4. Patricia opened the door with a hopeful expression, but her face changed when she saw the lawyer with me. "What's this?" she asked, blocking the entrance. "This is the conversation you wanted to have," I replied calmly. "Patricia, let me introduce you to Fernando Salazar, my lawyer." "Your lawyer?" Her voice rose. "Ricardo, what are you doing?" "I'm protecting my interests," I said and handed her a manila envelope. "These are the divorce papers." Patricia took the envelope as if it burned. Her hands trembled as she opened it and pulled out the documents. I watched her eyes scan the pages as the reality of the situation began to sink in. "No, you can't be serious," she stammered. "Ricardo, this is an exaggeration. Can we go to therapy? Can we work on this?" "Work on what exactly?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, though inside I felt a whirlwind of emotions. "On the fact that you kicked me out of my own house without proof, that you chose to believe your son without even giving me a chance to properly defend myself." "But Damien told me." "Damien lied." I interrupted her firmly. "And deep down I think you know it. But you preferred his version cause it was easier than facing the truth." "What truth?" Her eyes filled with tears. "That your son is a manipulator, that he never accepted our marriage, that he probably planned all this." At that moment, Damien appeared from the kitchen. He must have been listening to the whole conversation. "What are you talking about?" he demanded to know with an indignant expression. "Mom, what's he doing here?" "Your stepfather is leaving us," Patricia said with a broken voice, still looking at the divorce papers. "Good," Damien replied quickly. "It's for the best after what he did." "Shut up," I told him, and the coldness in my voice made him step back. "You don't have to keep acting anymore. You got what you wanted." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do," I insisted. "You planned every detail. The previous hints. Choosing a night when your mother had taken sleeping medication. Inventing a confession that never happened. Even the call to Laura's office was a brilliant touch." "You're paranoid," Damien said. But I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Concern, maybe fear. Fernando then intervened, his voice professional and calm. "Mr. Damien, may I ask you something? You called Mrs. Laura's office to verify her whereabouts, correct?" "That's right. I was checking Ricardo's alibi." "Interesting," Fernando continued, pulling out his own notebook. "And how did you know Laura's full name to look up her office?" "Ricardo never mentions last names when he talks about his colleagues at home, as I was informed." I watched the color drain from Damien's face. He'd made a mistake, and he knew it. He mentioned her last name before," he stammered. "No, I never did," I said firmly. "I always spoke of her as Laura, my partner. I never mentioned her full last name in this house." Patricia looked at both of us, confusion and growing horror on her face. "Damien, how did you know where to call?" "I looked in his phone," Damien admitted quickly. "One night, when he was distracted." "Lie," I replied. "My phone has a fingerprint lock. No one can unlock it except me." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia looked at her son with an expression I'd never seen her have. Pure doubt. "Mom, don't believe him." Damien said, his voice taking on a desperate tone. He's trying to manipulate you. He's using lawyer tricks to confuse you. Why did you do it? Patricia asked softly, and I saw tears rolling down her cheeks. Why would you lie about something like this? I didn't lie, Damien shouted, but his act was crumbling. He's the liar. He always has been. He came into our lives and changed everything. You stopped paying attention to me. Everything was about him, about the business, about his money. And there it was, the truth, finally coming out. This was about jealousy, I said, feeling more sadness than anger. About jealousy and resentment. It's not just that. Damien exploded. You don't understand anything. Before you came, Mom and I were a team. We were enough for each other. But then you appeared with your big house, your new car, your successful businesses. Suddenly, I wasn't enough anymore. I was never enough compared to you. Patricia had brought a hand to her mouth, horrified. Son, that's not true. I've always loved you. Ricardo never tried to replace you. Oh no. Damien laughed bitterly. Then why was I always compared? Why aren't you more like Ricardo? Why don't you have a stable job like Ricardo? Why aren't you responsible like Ricardo? I never said those things, Patricia protested weakly. Not in those exact words, but the message was clear. Damien slumped onto the sofa, his facade completely crumbled. And then, when I asked him for money a few weeks ago, he refused me. He made me feel like a failure, like I was worthless. I looked at this 27-year-old destroying lives out of spite and envy and felt a mix of pity and repulsion. You asked for money to pay gambling debts, I said softly. I found out later. Your mother didn't know, but I investigated. I didn't give you the money because you were throwing it away on sports bets. Patricia turned to her son, eyes wide. Gambling debts, Damien? What? It's not important, he muttered, looking at the floor. It's not important. Patricia's voice rose. You destroyed my marriage, cause Ricardo refused to fund your gambling addiction. It's not an addiction, Damien protested weakly. I just have bad luck sometimes. Fernando chose that moment to intervene again. Mr. Ricardo, do you wish to press defamation charges? The question dropped like a bomb. Damien looked up sharply, fear now evident on his face. Charges. False accusations of infidelity can be considered character defamation, Fernando explained calmly, especially if they caused emotional and financial harm. I didn't mean to. Damien looked at his mother desperately. Mom, tell them not to press charges, please. Patricia didn't respond. She was looking at the divorce papers she still held in her hands, tears falling on the paper and blurring the ink. I'm not pressing charges, I said finally, but only cause I don't want to prolong this more than necessary. I want to end this and move on with my life. Ricardo, please. Patricia finally spoke, her voice broken. Please don't do this. We can work it out now that we know the truth. And what would that change? I asked, feeling my own voice break for the first time. Patricia, you kicked me out without giving me a real chance. For 3 weeks you didn't answer my calls, you didn't read my messages. You condemned me based on Damien's word without a single proof. I was hurt, she sobbed. I thought you'd betrayed me. And I'm hurt, I replied. Because the woman I loved didn't trust me when I needed it most. Because after 11 years together, 11 years of loyalty and love, one lie was enough for you to abandon me. But now I know the truth, Patricia insisted, approaching me. Now I know Damien lied. We can start over. We can't, I said softly, backing away when she tried to touch me. Because even if I forgave this, Damien would always be between us. And you'll always choose your son, as it should be, I suppose. He's your blood, but I can't live like this, always fearing the next lie, the next manipulation. Damien's phone rang at that moment, breaking the tension. He looked at it, and paled even more if that was possible. Who is it? Patricia asked automatically. Nobody, Damien replied quickly, silencing the phone, but it rang again almost immediately. This time, unable to avoid it, I saw the name on the screen. Miguel Collections. Fernando saw it too. Debt problems? He asked casually. Damien didn't answer, but his silence said it all. Patricia noticed it too. How much do you owe? She asked with a trembling voice. It's not your problem, Damien muttered. I'm your mother. Everything that happens to you is my problem, Patricia yelled, and it was the first time I'd seen her truly confront her son like this. How much? 30,000, he finally admitted in a low voice. The shock on Patricia's face was evident. 30,000 pesos was almost a year of her teacher's salary. And that's why you invented this story, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. You thought that if Ricardo left, I'd use our savings to pay your debts. Damien didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. Silence was answer enough. My God. Patricia slumped into a chair as if her legs could no longer support her. What have I done? What have I turned my son into? Patricia, I said softly, feeling a touch of compassion despite everything. This isn't your fault. Yes, it is, she replied, looking at me with eyes full of guilt and regret. I always protected him too much. I always excused him. And when I had to choose between believing him or you, I chose to protect my son instead of trusting my husband. The divorce papers are here, Fernando said, pointing to the documents Patricia still held. You have 30 days to respond. If there's mutual agreement, the process can be quick and relatively painless. There's nothing painless about this, I murmured, looking around the living room that had been my home for 11 years. The photos on the wall, the furniture we'd chosen together, the memories of years that seemed to belong to another life now. I headed for the door, but Damien's voice stopped me. I'm sorry. I turned to look at him. He was sitting on the sofa with his head in his hands, looking for the first time like what he really was, a scared young man who had made a terrible mistake. Your apology doesn't change anything, I said, but I hope you learn from this. I hope you understand that lies have consequences, and I hope someday your mother can forgive you, 'cause I can't. I left that house for the second time, but this time it was different. The first time I'd left shattered, confused, not understanding what had happened. This time I left with my head held high, with clarity about who I was and what I deserved. Fernando accompanied me to my car. Are you sure about this? He asked before I left. You can still change your mind. I'm sure, I replied, surprising myself at how true my voice sounded. Some things, once broken, can't be repaired. That night, back in my hotel room, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since it all began. I cried for the lost marriage, for the years invested, for the betrayed trust, but I also felt something else, relief. Relief that the truth had finally come to light. Relief that I'd made a decision and followed it through. My phone vibrated with a message from Patricia. Please reconsider. I love you. It was a terrible mistake. Damien ruined everything. Give me a chance to fix it. I looked at that message for a long time before replying. The problem isn't just what Damien did. It's that you let him do it. It's that when I needed you, you weren't there. I wish you the best, Patricia, but I can't be a part of this anymore. I blocked her number after sending the message. It was time to start healing, and I couldn't do it if I kept receiving pleas that would only reopen the wounds. The following days were strangely calm. Without Patricia's constant calls and messages, I could start to truly process what had happened. Laura was a great support, listening when I needed to talk and distracting me with work when I needed not to think. Your ex must be having a really hard time, she commented one day as we reviewed contracts in the office. A friend of mine saw her at the supermarket. She says she looks terrible. I don't want to know, I replied honestly. I know it sounds cruel, but I need to think about myself now. It's not cruel, Laura assured. It's self-preservation. 2 weeks after delivering the divorce papers, I received a call from Fernando. Patricia signed, he announced. She accepted all terms without a fight. The divorce should be finalized in 30 days. I expected to feel something. Sadness, regret, maybe even relief, but what I felt was emptiness. 11 years of marriage reduced to signatures on legal paper. And Damien? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. From what I heard, Patricia kicked him out of the house, Fernando said. Apparently, she told him he needed to face the consequences of his actions. Only part of me felt satisfaction hearing that. But another part, the part that remembered the 16-year-old boy I met 11 years ago, felt sadness. Things didn't have to end like this. But this was how they'd ended, and now all that was left was to move on. Life after the divorce took on a strange rhythm. In the mornings I'd wake up in my hotel room, and for a moment forget where I was. Then reality would hit me. I no longer had a home. Only a temporary room that smelled of industrial air freshener and where the walls were too thin. 3 weeks after Patricia signed the papers, I decided enough was enough. I couldn't keep living in that limbo. I looked for a small but comfortable apartment in an area near my work. It was much more modest than the house I'd shared with Patricia, but it was mine, completely mine. The day I moved, Laura insisted on helping me, brought coffee and donuts, and made sarcastic comments about my meager furniture collection that made me laugh for the first time in weeks. "You definitely need more than a bed and a desk," she said, looking around the almost empty apartment. "Unless you're going for the extreme minimalist style. Everything else is at the house," I explained, feeling a pang of pain. "And I don't want to go back for anything. Not even your personal things, your books, your photos." "Especially not the photos," I replied. "I don't need physical reminders of what I lost." Laura looked at me with understanding. "I'm sorry, Ricardo. I know this is hard." "What's hard," I admitted, "is realizing that 11 years can evaporate as quickly as if none of it ever really mattered." "It did matter," Laura said firmly. "Just 'cause it ended badly doesn't mean it was all a waste. You loved, you were loved, you learned things about yourself. That counts." I wanted to believe her, but at that moment it was hard to see past the pain and betrayal. 2 days later, while working late at the office, my phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something made me do it. "Ricardo," it was a female voice I recognized. "I'm Monica, Patricia's sister." My stomach tightened. "Hello, Monica. Look, I know I have no right to call you after everything that happened, but I need you to know something. Patricia is not doing well. Really bad. It's not my responsibility," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "I know," Monica replied quickly. "I'm not calling to ask you to go back to her. I'm calling cause I think you deserve to know the whole truth about what happened." "I already know the truth. Damien lied. She believed him. End of story." "There's more," Monica insisted. "Can I see you for just half an hour? After that, if you want me to disappear from your life forever, I will." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a neutral coffee shop, far from both my office and the area where Patricia lived. Monica arrived on time, looking tired and worried. "Thanks for coming," she said, ordering a coffee she barely touched. "I know this is weird, very weird. I admit it's so important you couldn't say it on the phone." Monica took a deep breath. "Patricia didn't know Damien had gambling problems. None of us knew. But I started investigating after you two separated, 'cause something didn't add up. Damien doesn't just owe 30,000 pesos. Ricardo, he owes over 200,000. The figure took my breath away. 200,000? He's been gambling online for at least 3 years. He used credit cards in Patricia's name without her knowing. He forged her signature on documents. The house you shared, it has a second mortgage that Patricia never authorized." I felt as if I'd been hit. "How's that possible?" "Damien works at a bank," Monica explained. "He knows the system. He knew how to manipulate documents. Patricia trusted him to handle some financial things, 'cause she was never good with paperwork. He took advantage of that trust. Patricia knows all this. Now she does." Monica nodded sadly. "We found out a week ago when the lenders started calling the house directly. Patricia panicked and asked for my help to review everything. Ricardo, they're going to take her house. There's no way she can pay those debts with her teacher's salary." Part of me felt satisfaction hearing this. It was the natural consequence of blindly believing her manipulative son. But another part, the part that had loved Patricia for 11 years, felt pain for her. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "I can't help her, Monica. Not even if I wanted to." "I'm not asking for money," she clarified quickly. "I'm telling you this 'cause I want you to understand something. Damien didn't just destroy you, he destroyed Patricia. He also meticulously planned everything. The manipulation about your supposed infidelity was just part of a larger plan to get both of you out of the way and have total control over Patricia's finances." I processed this information slowly. "Are you saying all this was for money?" "For money and for control," Monica confirmed. "Damien has a serious addiction. Addicts do terrible things. But that doesn't excuse what he did. And that's not why I'm calling you. I'm calling you 'cause Patricia finally saw her son for what he really is, and it's destroying her. Not as your wife, but as a mother. She blames herself for everything, for raising him like this, for not seeing the signs, for choosing him over you. She should feel guilty," I said harshly. "I know." Monica nodded. "And she does more than you imagine. Last night, I found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m. crying over the divorce papers. She keeps saying that if only she'd trusted you, none of this would have happened." "She's right," I replied. "If she'd trusted me, we'd still be married and we could have faced Damien's problem together. But she didn't trust. She chose to believe a liar instead of her husband." "I know," Monica repeated. And I'm not asking you to forgive her. I just wanted you to know that she's paying for her mistake. She'll probably lose the house. Damien is in a rehab center for gamblers that she herself is paying for using the little money she has left in her retirement account. And she's alone, completely alone, facing all this. I stayed silent, looking at my cold coffee. Part of me, the hurt and angry part, thought Patricia deserved all this, but another, smaller part, remembered the good times, Sunday mornings making breakfast together, nights watching movies on the sofa, the plans we'd made for the future. Thanks for telling me, I said finally, but none of this changes what happened between us. The divorce is still going ahead. I understand. Monica stood up to leave. I just wanted you to know the complete truth. Patricia isn't perfect. She made a terrible mistake. But Damien manipulated her as much as he manipulated you. After Monica left, I stayed at the coffee shop for a long time. My phone vibrated with a message from Fernando. The final papers are ready. The divorce will be official in a week. Do you want to review anything before it's finalized? No, I replied. It's all good. But it wasn't good. Nothing was good. Discovering that Damien had been even more manipulative than I thought didn't make me feel vindicated. It made me feel empty. 2 lives ruined by one person's addiction and lies. That night, lying in bed in my new apartment, I thought about Patricia losing her house, the same house where she'd lived with Damien before meeting me, the house that had been her refuge when her first marriage ended. I thought about her, facing mountains of debt she hadn't created, trying to save a son who'd betrayed her in the worst possible way. And I hated myself a little for feeling compassion. The next day, Laura noticed my mood. What happened? She asked directly during lunch. You have that look of, I'm overthinking something I shouldn't care about. I told her about my conversation with Monica. Laura listened without interrupting, her expression growing more and more serious. 200,000 pesos, she whistled when I finished. That kid needs more than rehab. I know. And you're thinking of helping her. Laura looked at me with disbelief. Ricardo, after everything she did to you? I'm not thinking of helping her. I interrupted, though I wasn't completely sure that was true. I'm just processing the information. Look, Laura said, choosing her words carefully. I understand you still love her. 11 years don't just disappear overnight. But you have to remember, she kicked you out. She called you a liar. She didn't trust you when you needed her most. The fact that Damien is worse than we thought doesn't change what she did. I know, I repeated, though the words sounded hollow even to me. Besides, Laura continued, if you get involved now, what message do you send her? That she can treat you badly and you'll always come back when things get difficult for her? That's not love, Ricardo. That's being a lifeguard. She was right, of course, but the heart doesn't always listen to reason. That night, I received another message, this time from a number I recognized as Patricia's. I know you blocked my other number. Monica told me she met with you. You didn't have to find out all this. I just want you to know that I never meant to hurt you, and I regret every day not believing you. But I understand it's too late. I wish you the best, Ricardo. Always. I read the message several times. It was simple, direct, without pleas or manipulation. Just a sincere apology and a farewell. My finger hovered over the keyboard for several minutes before I finally typed a reply. I wish you the best too. It was the least I could say and the most I was willing to offer. The next few days passed in a blur. I worked, returned to my apartment, ate takeout, and watched series without really paying attention. Fernando called me to confirm that the divorce would be officially finalized the following Friday. Any last-minute changes? He asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. None, I confirmed. On Thursday night, a day before the divorce was official, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, I was surprised to find Patricia standing in the hallway. She looked terrible. Swollen eyes, wrinkled clothes, uncombed hair. It was like seeing a ghost of the woman I once knew. How did you know where I live? I asked, blocking the entrance. Laura told me, she admitted. I begged her. I told her I just needed to see you one more time. Mentally, I reminded myself to talk to Laura about sharing my address. What do you want, Patricia? I just want you to look me in the eyes and tell me you don't feel anything anymore. Her voice broke. If you can do that, I'll leave and you'll never hear from me again. I wanted to be able to tell her. I wanted to be able to look her in the eyes and say that I no longer loved her, that all that love had died the day she kicked me out of the house. But I couldn't, cause it would be a lie. It's not that simple. I said finally. So you still feel something? There was hope in her voice, and that hurt me. What I feel or don't feel doesn't change anything, I replied. You broke my trust, Patricia. That's a kind of wound that doesn't heal simply cause we discover your son is worse than we thought. I know, she whispered. I know and I accept it. But I needed to try one more time. I needed to know if there was any chance, however small. There isn't, I said, though the words tore me apart as I spoke them. Tomorrow we'll be officially divorced. It's time for both of us to move on. Patricia nodded slowly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I loved you, she said softly. I still love you, and I'm more sorry than words can express. She turned to leave, but stopped after a few steps. One more thing, she said without turning around. Damien is in rehab. He finally admitted everything. The gambling, the debts, how he manipulated the whole situation. He's getting help. I don't know if that matters to you, but I thought you should know. I'm glad he's getting help, I said honestly. But that doesn't change what he did. I know. Patricia began to walk down the hallway. Goodbye, Ricardo. Goodbye, Patricia. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling as if I'd just run a marathon. That had been one of the most difficult conversations of my life, but also one of the most necessary. The next day, Fernando called me to confirm that the divorce was finalized. 11 years of marriage had officially ended. I expected to feel something dramatic. Relief, sadness, regret. But what I felt was peace, a strange and melancholic peace, but peace nonetheless. That night, while organizing some documents in my apartment, I found an old photo of Patricia and me on our second anniversary. We were on a beach, smiling at the camera, unaware of what the future held. I looked at that photo for a long time before putting it in a box with other memories of the past. I didn't throw it away. I wasn't ready for that yet, but I didn't leave it in plain sight either. It was part of my story, but it was no longer my present and definitely not my future. My phone vibrated with a message from Laura. How are you feeling? Free, I replied. And as I typed that word, I realized it was true. For the first time in months, I felt free. 3 months after the divorce, my life had found a rhythm I hadn't expected, stability. It wasn't the euphoric happiness some promised after a breakup, but it was something better, genuine tranquility. The business with Laura was thriving. We'd closed 2 major contracts that positioned us as one of the most sought-after consultancies in the city. Laura joked that my renewed energy was good for business. Nothing like a painful divorce to make you work like an obsessive, she'd say with an ironic smile. I'm not obsessive, I'd protest, just dedicated. You arrive at 6 a.m. and leave at 9 p.m. That's obsession, Ricardo. Maybe she was right, but work kept me focused, gave me purpose, and after months of emotional chaos, I needed that. One Friday afternoon, while reviewing financial projections in my office, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something prompted me to do so. Ricardo. It was a male voice I didn't immediately recognize. I'm Damien. My blood ran cold. How did you get my number? I looked in your company directory, he admitted. Look, I know you don't want to talk to me and I understand, but I need to tell you something important. I have nothing to talk about with you. Please. His voice sounded different, more mature, less arrogant. Just 5 minutes. After that, if you want, you can block this number and I'll never bother you again. Against my better judgment, I agreed. 5 minutes. Thanks. He breathed a sigh of relief. First, I want to apologize. I know words don't change anything, but I'm sorry. I ruined your life. I ruined my mom's life and all because of my stupid addiction. Your apologies don't interest me, I said coldly. If that's all. No, wait. He hurried. There's something else you need to know, something even my mom doesn't know yet. What? There was a long pause. Mom's debts aren't just from my gambling. I used her info to get loans, but not all that money went to gambling. My stomach tightened. What did you do with it? I invested in a business with a guy I met online. He promised me he'd double the money in 6 months. It was a pyramid scheme. I lost everything. 150,000 pesos. The other 50,000 were from gambling. And your mother doesn't know this? No. His voice broke. She's paying for debts she doesn't even fully understand. And I have no way to fix it, not even after rehab. I have no job, no savings, no nothing. It's not my problem, I said, though I felt a strange mix of anger and compassion. I know, he admitted, but I thought you deserved to know. 'Cause Mom is going to lose the house in 2 weeks. The bank will foreclose and she still thinks maybe she can save it if she gets a second job or something. But she can't. The debts are too big. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person I know who could help her, he said softly. And because despite everything I did, I know you still love her. I saw it in your eyes that day when you brought the divorce papers. You were angry, hurt, but you still loved her. My love isn't enough reason to rescue her from the consequences of your actions. You're right, he agreed. But I just wanted you to know. She doesn't deserve this. I do, but she doesn't. He hung up before I could reply. I stared at the phone, feeling the tranquility I'd carefully built for 3 months crumble. That night, I couldn't sleep. Damien's words echoed in my mind. Patricia losing her house. Patricia, who had worked all her life, who had been a good teacher, a good person, despite her monumental mistake with me. Patricia paying for her son's sins. It's not your problem. I repeated over and over, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day, against my better judgment, I drove to the house. My house, technically still, until the final property paperwork was processed. There was a foreclosure sign nailed in the front yard. Patricia opened the door when I knocked. She looked even worse than the last time I'd seen her, thinner, with deep dark circles under her eyes, hair almost completely gray. Ricardo, she said surprised, what are you doing here? Damien called me. I explained. He told me about the house. Her face fell. You didn't have to come. This isn't your responsibility. Can I come in? She hesitated, but finally stepped aside. The house looked different, emptier. Many furniture pieces were gone. I sold what I could, Patricia explained, noticing my gaze. Trying to raise money for the bank payment. It wasn't enough. Damien told me it wasn't just the gambling, I said. That he invested $150,000 in a scam. Patricia slumped onto the sofa, the only furniture left in the living room. I know. He finally confessed to me last week, when it was already too late to do anything about it. Why didn't you call me? What for? She asked bitterly. I already lost the right to ask you for help when I chose to believe my son over you. Besides, why would you want to help the woman who betrayed you? Because despite everything, I don't want to see you on the street, I admitted. The honesty in those words surprised even me. Patricia looked up, hope and confusion mixed in her expression. What are you saying? I don't know. I replied honestly. I just know I came all this way, so obviously some part of me still cares. There was a long silence. Patricia finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You know what's the worst part of all this? It's not losing the house, it's not the debts, it's realizing that by raising Damien, by creating that manipulative monster, I also lost the only man who truly loved me. And I can't blame anyone but myself. You're not responsible for Damien's actions, I said. Though part of me wasn't sure I completely believed that. I'm responsible for protecting him too much, for blindly believing him, for choosing to be his mother instead of your wife when it mattered. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Monica told me to stop feeling sorry for myself, to face the consequences and move on. She's probably right. Probably, I agreed. So why are you here? She asked directly. If it's not to help, if it's not to tell me I told you so, why did you come? That was the million-dollar question. Because I needed to see you with my own eyes. I needed to confirm that all this was real, that the consequences were as devastating as Damien described. And now that you've confirmed it, I sat on the sofa next to her, maintaining a respectful distance. Now I don't know what to do with that information. Patricia laughed humorlessly. You were always like that. Too good for your own good. Even now, after everything, you're here feeling guilty about my situation. I don't feel guilty, I clarified. I feel conflicted. At that moment my phone rang. It was Laura. Where are you? She asked without preamble. We have the investor meeting in an hour. I had completely forgotten the meeting. I'm on my way. Are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. I'll see you at the office. I hung up and stood. Patricia looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. You have to go, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, important meeting. You were always in important meetings, she commented nostalgically. You worked so much. I used to complain about that, but I actually admired your dedication, Patricia. I know. She raised a hand. You don't want to hear this. Go to your meeting. And Ricardo, thanks for coming. Even if it doesn't change anything, it meant something. I left that house feeling as if I had a 1,000 kilograms weight on my shoulders. Throughout the investor meeting, I could barely concentrate. Laura gave me worried glances, but said nothing until we were alone. What's wrong? She asked directly. And don't tell me nothing, 'cause I know you better than that. I told her about Damien's call, about my visit to Patricia, about seeing the foreclosure sign. No, Laura said immediately when I finished. Don't even think about what I know you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything. Liar. She pointed a finger at me. You're thinking of helping her? Of paying her debts, or buying the house, or something equally ridiculous. It's not ridiculous to worry about someone. It's ridiculous to rescue someone who betrayed you, Laura countered. Ricardo, listen to me carefully. If you do this, if you help her now, what message do you send? That she can treat you like trash and you'll always be there to save her. She didn't treat me like trash. She made a mistake. A mistake that almost destroyed you, Laura reminded. A mistake she chose to make. She had all the information. She had years of knowing you and still chose to believe Damien. I know, I admitted. But seeing her like that, watching her life fall apart. It's sad, Laura interrupted. It's really sad. But it's not your responsibility to fix it. She's an adult. Damien is an adult. Consequences are part of life. That night, lying in bed, I thought about Laura's words. She was right. Of course, the logic was impeccable, but the heart rarely follows logic. I thought about all the good years with Patricia. Sundays making breakfast together, nights watching movies, long conversations about our dreams, the laughter, the genuine love that had existed between us. I also thought about the day she kicked me out, her face when she called me a liar. About the 3 weeks of silence, while I suffered alone. About the broken trust that could never be fully repaired. And at some point between remembering the love and remembering the pain, I made a decision. The next day, I called Fernando. I need your help with something, I said. Something you'll probably think is a bad idea. Usually when clients start like that, they're right, Fernando replied dryly. But go ahead, I'm listening. The house where I lived with Patricia, it's technically still in my name until the property transfer to the bank is processed. Correct, correct. Where are you going with this? I want to stop the foreclosure. There was a long silence on the other end. Ricardo, think this through carefully. If you pay that mortgage, you'll essentially be giving her the house. Are you sure? No, I admitted. But I'm going to do it anyway. May I ask why? Because, I said slowly, I need to be able to look myself in the mirror and know that I did the right thing. Not for her, not for Damien, for me, so I can move on knowing I didn't let my pain turn me into someone cruel. That's very noble, Fernando said. And probably very stupid, but you're my client, so I'll do as you ask. Do you want me to pay the full debt, or just enough to stop the foreclosure? Enough to stop the foreclosure and bring the mortgage current. She can handle the regular payments with her salary if she doesn't have the additional debts hanging over her head. And Damien's other debts? Those aren't my problem, I said firmly. Patricia can declare bankruptcy or make payment arrangements, but at least she'll have a roof over her head while she figures it out. All right, Fernando agreed. I'll process everything this week. Do you want Patricia to know it's from you? I thought about that. Part of me wanted her to know. I wanted her to understand that despite everything, I wasn't like Damien. But another part knew that if she knew, she'd try to contact me, thank me, maybe even try to rekindle something that was better off dead. No, I finally decided. Do it in a way that makes it seem like the bank made a mistake or that there was a review, something that doesn't connect it to me. I can do that, Fernando confirmed. Ricardo, I hope you know what you're doing. Me too, I admitted. A week later, Fernando informed me that everything was done. The foreclosure had been stopped, the mortgage was current, and Patricia had been notified that there had been an accounting error and that her case was being reevaluated. She believed it? I asked. Apparently, she questioned everything thoroughly, Fernando said. But the documents are solid. There's no way to trace it back to you unless she hires a private investigator, which I doubt she can afford. Good, I said, feeling a strange mix of relief and melancholy. Laura found out. Of course, she knew me too well not to notice. You did it, didn't you? She confronted me in the office. You paid her debts. Only the mortgage, I clarified. And before you start, I don't want to hear about how it was a bad decision. I wasn't going to say that, Laura replied, surprising me. I was going to say that I hope this brings you the peace you're looking for. Don't you think I was an idiot? Oh, you were definitely an idiot. She smiled. But you were a noble idiot. There's a difference. That night, For the first time since the divorce, I slept without disturbing dreams about Patricia or Damien. I had done what I felt I had to do for reasons only I fully understood. And though I knew some would call it weakness, I called it liberation. 2 months after paying Patricia's mortgage, my life had reached a balance I never imagined possible after the divorce. The business with Laura was at its best. I had started going out with friends again and had even begun to consider the possibility of dating someone eventually. One Tuesday afternoon, while reviewing contracts in my office, I received an unexpected call from Monica. "Ricardo, I know I have no right to call you," she began, her voice tense. "But I need you to know something. Patricia discovered the truth about the mortgage." My stomach tightened. "How?" Damien told her. Monica explained with evident frustration. "Apparently, he found out somehow and thought it was a good idea to tell Patricia. He says it was cause he wanted her to know the truth, but I think he just wanted to cause more drama." "How is she?" "Confused, angry, grateful, all at the same time." Monica sighed. "She's been trying to contact you for 2 days, but you obviously have her number blocked. She asked me to call you to ask if you could see her. I don't know if that's a good idea." "I know," Monica agreed, "but she won't stop trying. You know my sister. When she gets something in her head, she doesn't rest until she solves it." After hanging up with Monica, I stared at the phone for a long time. I had paid the mortgage precisely to avoid this situation, to be able to move on without further complications. But apparently Damien had to ruin it once more. That night, while eating dinner alone in my apartment, someone knocked on the door. When I opened it, I found Patricia standing there with a determined expression I knew well. "Monica gave me your address," she said before I could protest. "And before you close the door in my face, I need to say this. Patricia, please." Her voice broke slightly. "Just 5 minutes. Then I'll leave and I won't bother you again. I promise." I sighed and stepped aside. She entered, looking around the apartment with curiosity. It was the first time she'd seen where I lived now. "It's nice," she commented. "Small but cozy. What did you want to tell me?" I asked directly. Patricia took a deep breath. "Damien told me what you did, that you paid the mortgage, that you saved my house." "I didn't do it for you," I said quickly. "I did it for me. I needed to be able to move on knowing I did the right thing." "The right thing would be to save the woman who betrayed you?" she asked bitterly. "Ricardo, you didn't have to do that. In fact, you had every right to let me lose the house. It was a consequence of my decisions." "I know. Then why?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Why, after everything I did to you, after how I treated you, did you continue to be kinder to me than I deserved?" "Because unlike some people," I said calmly, "I don't allow pain to turn me into someone cruel. Yes, you hurt me. Yes, you betrayed me. But that doesn't mean I should let you be homeless for your son's actions." Patricia covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Probably not," I admitted. "But kindness isn't about what people deserve. It's about who you choose to be." She wiped her tears and tried to compose herself. "I want to pay you back. I don't know how or when, but I'll find a way. I'll take a second job. I'll sell what I have left, whatever it takes." "I don't want your money," I said firmly. "But Patricia, listen to me," I interrupted her. "I didn't pay that mortgage expecting you to pay me back. I did it so I could close this chapter of my life in a way I could live with. If you start sending me payments, if we keep contact because of the money, we'll never be able to truly move on." "Is that what you want?" she asked softly. "To move on without me is what I need," I replied honestly. "What we both need." Patricia nodded slowly, accepting the inevitable. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on what it is." "If things had been different," she said hesitantly, "if I had believed you from the beginning, if I had trusted you over Damien, do you think we would still be together?" It was an impossible question to answer. "Probably," I admitted, "but things weren't different. And we can't build a future on what if." "I know," she whispered. "I just needed to hear it. I needed to know that what we had was real, that it wasn't all a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I assured her. "It was real. The love was real. It's just that sometimes love isn't enough to overcome certain betrayals." There was a long silence. Patricia finally stood up to leave. "Can I hug you?" she asked. "One last time." I hesitated, but finally nodded. She hugged me tightly, and for a moment, it was like going back in time, when hugs were simple expressions of love instead of painful goodbyes. "Thank you," she whispered against my shoulder, "for everything, for the good years, for being a good man, for saving my house even when I didn't deserve it. And I'm sorry for not having been the wife you deserved. Goodbye, Patricia, I said softly. Goodbye, Ricardo. I watched her walk down the hallway and close the door. This time I knew it really was the end. There were no more pending conversations, no more unresolved issues, just memories and the certainty that I had done the right thing. The next morning, I received a text message from an unknown number. It was Damien. I know you hate my guts and you have every right, but I need you to know something. Mom is okay now. She has the house, she has her job, and she finally kicked me out of her life permanently. She says she needs to learn to live without saving people who don't want to be saved. I think she was talking about me, but also about you. Thanks for what you did, even though I don't deserve it. And I'm sorry for everything. I didn't reply to the message. Some things simply didn't deserve a reply. 3 weeks later, while having lunch with Laura at our favorite restaurant, she told me something interesting. I saw Patricia the other day, she said casually, at the supermarket. Oh, really? I tried to sound disinterested. She looks better, Laura continued, lighter. Somehow we talked briefly. She told me she started therapy and that she's finally working on setting boundaries with Damien. I'm glad for her. She also asked about you, Laura added, observing my reaction. She wanted to know if you were okay, if you were happy. And what did you tell her? I told her the truth. Laura smiled. That you're fine, that you're rebuilding, that you'll probably be ready to love again someday. But that day isn't today. Thanks, I said sincerely. You know what's funny? Laura leaned forward. I think she's really letting you go this time. Not like before when she said she'd move on, but secretly hoped you'd come back. This time it's real. Good. I replied and I meant it. A month later, in one of our weekly business update meetings, Laura arrived with a mischievous smile. I have to introduce you to someone, she announced. No, I said immediately, knowing where this was going. I'm not interested in you introducing me to anyone. You don't even know who it is. It doesn't matter. I'm not ready. She's my husband's sister. She continued as if I hadn't said anything. An architect, smart, fun. She's divorced too, so she understands how complicated it can be. Laura, just one dinner, she insisted. The 4 of us. No pressure. If there's no chemistry, no problem, but you have to start sometime, Ricardo. It's been almost 8 months since the divorce. I eventually gave in more to get Laura to stop bothering me than out of any real interest in meeting someone new. Dinner was scheduled for the following Friday. On Thursday night, as I prepared for bed, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize at first. When I read it, I realized it was from Patricia, from a new phone. I heard you're going out with someone. I just wanted to say that I'm happy for you. You deserve to be happy, Ricardo. You deserve someone who values you from the beginning and who never doubts you. I hope you find her. This is truly goodbye. Take care. I read the message several times. It was different from all the other communications we'd had since the divorce. There were no hidden pleas, no hope of reconciliation, just a genuine wish for my happiness. I wrote a simple reply. Thanks. I also hope you find the peace you're looking for. Friday's dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Carmen, Laura's husband's sister, was exactly as Laura had described her, intelligent, fun, with an easy smile and a refreshing outlook on life. There were no immediate sparks, but there was a comfortable connection that suggested potential. So, Carmen said when Laura and her husband excused themselves momentarily from the table, how long have you been divorced? 8 months, I replied. And you? 2 years, she smiled. So I'm a veteran compared to you. Let me tell you, it gets better. Not quickly, but it gets better. I hope so. Laura told me a little about your situation. She continued carefully. Sounds complicated. It was, I admitted. But I'm better now. I learned a lot about myself, about what I want and what I won't tolerate. That's a good attitude. Carmen took a sip of wine. My ex taught me that love isn't enough if there's no respect. Sounds like you learned something similar. Exactly that. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was the beginning of something, a possibility, a chance to build something new without the weight of past betrayals. 2 months later, Carmen and I were dating regularly. It wasn't intense or dramatic as it had been with Patricia at first. It was calm, stable, built on mutual honesty and respect. One afternoon, as we walked through the park, Carmen asked me, "Do you ever think about your ex?" Sometimes, I replied honestly, but less and less. Do you think you'll ever completely forgive her? I thought about the question carefully. I think I already have in a way. I forgave what happened, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or going back. It means letting go of resentment so you can move on. Carmen nodded thoughtfully. That's a very mature way of looking at it. It took me a while to get here, I admitted, but it was worth it. And it was true. For the first time since Patricia kicked me out of the house, I felt genuinely at peace. Not because I had forgotten the pain or because the love had completely disappeared, but because I had chosen to move on in a way that respected both my past and my future. I had learned that betrayal could break you, but it could also rebuild you stronger if you allowed it. I had learned that kindness was not weakness and that doing the right thing didn't always mean doing what others expected. And I had learned, perhaps more importantly, that the end of a story didn't have to be bitter to be definitive. A year after the divorce, my life had taken a turn I never anticipated. Carmen and I had moved in together into a bigger apartment. The business with Laura had expanded to 2 more cities, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. It was a Saturday morning when I received a call from Monica. We hadn't spoken in months, so her call surprised me. "Ricardo, I'm sorry to bother you," she began, "but I thought you'd want to know. Patricia is getting married." The news hit me with unexpected force. It wasn't pain exactly, but something more complex. "That's right, a teacher at her school," Monica explained. "They've known each other for years, but started dating 6 months ago. He's a good man, patient, kind, nothing like. Well, he's different." "I'm glad for her," I said, and I was surprised to realize I meant it. "There's something else," Monica continued hesitantly. "Damien is changing too. He's been sober for 10 months, has a stable job, and is finally paying his debts little by little. Patricia says it's like having the son she thought she'd lost back." "That's good," I replied sincerely. "Everyone deserves a second chance, even after what he did to you." I thought about that question, especially after what he did to me. His redemption isn't about me. It's about him becoming a better person. After hanging up, I stared out the window for a long time. Carmen came out of the shower and noticed my thoughtful expression. "Everything okay?" she asked, drying her hair. "Patricia is getting married." Carmen sat next to me, taking my hand. "How do you feel about that?" "Strangely good," I admitted. "I think it's the final confirmation that we're both truly moving on." "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "How things ended? Not trying one more time?" "No," I replied without hesitation. What Patricia and I had was real, but it was also broken in ways that couldn't be repaired. Some things simply aren't meant to last, no matter how much you love them. Carmen kissed me softly. "Thanks for being so honest. I know it's not easy to talk about this." That afternoon, as we prepared dinner together in our kitchen, I realized how different this relationship was. With Patricia, there had always been an underlying tension, a silent competition for Damien's constant attention. With Carmen, there was peace, simplicity. 2 adults building something together without the weight of manipulative children or dysfunctional families. "I was thinking," Carmen said as she cut vegetables, "maybe we should take a trip to Europe, maybe celebrate your year of freedom." "Year of freedom?" I repeated with a smile. "Well, a year since you started rebuilding your life," she corrected. "I think that deserves celebrating." The idea was tempting. "When?" "Next month. Laura can handle the business for 2 weeks, and I can take vacation. What do you say?" "I say yes," I replied, hugging her from behind. "Definitely yes." 2 weeks later, as I walked through the office reviewing some contracts before our trip, Laura called me into her office. "I have news," she announced with a mysterious smile. "Remember that big contract with the tech company, the one we've been chasing for months?" "That's right, we got it." Her eyes gleamed with excitement. "And not only that, they want a long-term partnership. Ricardo, this could double our income in the next year." We hugged, celebrating the success we'd worked so hard to achieve. It was ironic, I thought, how everything had started to flourish after I let go of the dead weight of a marriage that was suffocating me. "You know what's crazy?" I said as we poured champagne to celebrate. "A year ago, I was at the lowest point of my life, getting divorced, living in a hotel, feeling like a total failure. And look at you now." Laura raised her glass. "Thriving business, healthy relationship, trip to Europe in your future." I'd say things turned out pretty well. "They turned out better than I imagined," I admitted. "But you know what's the best part of all?" "What?" "That I finally feel like myself again, not as Patricia's husband, not as Damien's stepfather, just Ricardo, and I like being this person." The night before our trip to Europe, as I packed, I received an unexpected email. It was from Patricia. Ricardo, I know you weren't expecting to hear from me. Monica told me she told you about my engagement. I wanted you to know directly from me, although I understand if you prefer not to know anything about my life. I'm getting married in 3 months. His name is Andres, and he's everything I need at this moment in my life. Tranquility, honesty, patience. I also wanted to tell you that Damien completed a year sober. He has a job he loves and is paying his debts. He still goes to therapy twice a week. I don't mention this to seek your forgiveness or approval, but because I know that at some point you cared about him. Despite everything, I finally want to thank you, not only for saving my house, although that was incredibly generous. I want to thank you for showing me what true character looks like. When you had every right to be cruel, you chose to be kind. When you could have taken revenge, you chose compassion. You taught me more with those actions than 1,000 apologies of mine ever could. I hope you're happy, Ricardo. I hope you find or have found someone who values you from day one, who never doubts you, who loves you the way you always deserved. And I hope someday you can remember our time together without pain, just as a chapter that helped you become who you are today. With love and gratitude, Patricia. I read the email twice before showing it to Carmen, who had been watching me silently. It's beautiful, she said after reading it. Sounds like she finally found peace. We all found it, I replied. It just took time and a lot of pain to get here. Are you going to reply? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to write something elaborate, something that would perfectly tie up all loose ends. But in the end, simplicity seemed more appropriate. I wrote, Patricia, I'm glad you found happiness. We all deserve second chances, and I'm glad that both you and Damien are taking advantage of yours. Thanks for your kind words. I also hope you can remember our time together fondly, not with regret. May you be very happy in your new life. Ricardo. I pressed send and closed the laptop. That chapter was officially closed. Europe was everything we expected and more. Carmen and I walked through cobblestone streets in Paris. We got lost in the museums of Rome. We enjoyed wine in Tuscany, and at some point between ancient cathedrals and cozy cafes, I realized something important. I had stopped comparing. I no longer compared Carmen to Patricia. I no longer thought about how Patricia would have reacted to this view or that meal. Carmen was Carmen, and our relationship was completely our own, not an improved version of something previous. One night, sitting in a restaurant overlooking the Colosseum in Rome, Carmen surprised me with a question. Have you ever wondered what would have happened if Patricia had trusted you from the beginning? I used to, I admitted, but not anymore. 'Cause everything that happened led me exactly where I needed to be. Here with you, with this life we built. That's very philosophical. She smiled. The Italian wine is making you reflective. Maybe, I laughed. Or maybe I'm just grateful. Grateful that the worst experience of my life taught me exactly what I want and what I won't tolerate. Grateful to have found someone who understands that. Carmen raised her glass. To the painful lessons that lead us to beautiful places. To the painful lessons, I repeated, toasting with her. 3 months after returning from Europe, I was in my office when Laura entered with a serious expression. I just got a weird call, she said. It was Patricia. My stomach tightened. What did she want? She wanted to thank me, Laura explained, sitting down, for being your friend, for supporting you during the divorce. She said she realized now how much you needed that support and that she was grateful you had someone. That's unexpected. There's more. Laura continued. She told me she's getting married next week, and that although she completely understands if you don't want to, she'd like you to know that you're invited. Not as an ex-husband, but as someone who was important in her life and who helped her become who she is now. She asked you to tell me that. Yes. She said she didn't want to make you uncomfortable by contacting you directly. I thought about the invitation. A year ago, the idea of attending Patricia's wedding would have been unthinkable. But now, with a year of healing, with Carmen by my side, with my own life flourishing, it felt different. I'm not going, I finally decided. But tell her I appreciate the invitation and that I wish her the best. Are you sure? Laura asked. It could be a way to completely close the circle. The circle is already closed, I replied. I don't need to be at her wedding for that. She deserves that day without the ghost of her previous marriage present, and I deserve not to have to navigate the awkwardness of that situation. Laura nodded understandingly. I'll tell her. On the day of Patricia's wedding, Carmen and I went on a countryside excursion. It was a beautiful spring afternoon, and as we walked along a path lined with wildflowers, I realized I hadn't thought about the wedding once until that moment. "You know what day it is today?" Carmen asked as if she'd read my mind. "Yes," I replied, "and I'm glad to be here with you instead of there." "Me too," she smiled, squeezing my hand. 6 months later, Carmen and I decided to get married. It wasn't a dramatic decision or an elaborate proposal. We were simply having breakfast one Sunday morning when she said, "We should get married." And I replied, "Yes, we should." It was that simple, that right. The wedding was small, intimate, with only our closest friends and family. Laura was my witness, smiling proudly as Carmen and I exchanged vows we wrote ourselves. "I promise to love you on the easy days and on the difficult ones," I said, looking into Carmen's eyes. "I promise to trust you, even when it's hard. I promise to choose you every day, not out of obligation, but cause there's no one else I'd rather be with." As I said those words, I thought briefly of Patricia. I thought of the similar promises we'd made 11 years ago, of how life can change everything in an instant. But I didn't feel sadness. I felt gratitude. Gratitude caused that marriage, although it ended in betrayal and pain, taught me exactly what I needed for this marriage. It taught me the importance of trust, the value of communication, and the power of choosing your partner over everyone else, even over family. After the ceremony, as we danced our first song as husband and wife, Carmen whispered, "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am," I replied honestly. "How the worst year of my life led me to the best." "Scars make us stronger," she said wisely, "and more capable of appreciating when something is truly good." She was right. The scars of my divorce hadn't disappeared. They probably never would, but they no longer hurt. They had become part of my story, reminders of what I survived and what I learned. 2 years after my divorce from Patricia, I received a final message from her. It was a photo of a baby with a simple message. "Andres Jr. was born yesterday. Mother and son are well. I thought you'd want to know that I finally have the family I always wanted, the right way this time. I hope you've also found your happiness. Thanks for everything. Goodbye, Ricardo." I looked at the baby's photo, that small wrinkled face representing Patricia's new beginning, and smiled genuinely. "Everything okay?" Carmen asked, approaching. "Everything's perfect," I replied, showing her the photo. "Patricia had a baby." "It's beautiful," Carmen said. "Are you going to reply?" "No," I decided after a moment. "I think this is the real end. We no longer need updates on each other's lives. She has her family, I have mine." And it was true. Carmen and I were expecting our own baby, a girl who would be born in 3 months. Life had moved on in ways I never imagined possible 2 years ago. That night, lying in bed with Carmen, her hand on her growing belly, I reflected on the entire journey. From the day Patricia kicked me out of the house believing Damien's lies to this moment of complete peace, I had learned that betrayal, although devastating, doesn't have to define you. I had learned that you can choose to be kind even when you have every right to be cruel. I had learned that forgiveness is more about your own healing than about the redemption of the one who hurt you. And more importantly, I had learned that endings, however painful, are simply the beginning of something new, something potentially better. My wife kicked me out of the house believing her son's lies. 3 weeks later, she asked if I'd reflected. I gave her the divorce papers, and her son went mad. But that wasn't the whole story. The complete story was about how I survived, how I grew, and how I found something better on the other side of pain. And now, looking to the future with Carmen and our unborn daughter, I could say with certainty, it was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, 'cause they led me exactly where I needed to be. Have you ever faced a betrayal that you thought would destroy you only to discover it made you stronger? Have you had to make the difficult decision to walk away from someone you love 'cause it was best for you?